I don't think that headphone is picking anything up. He dropped out. Okay, well, anyways, so we got 7 people currently in the chat. I appreciate everybody coming in to hear our discussion about near-death experiences. This is the 4BZ Truth Channel. My name is Charlie, and we're contemplating the cosmos. That's my tag. I always want to get into the deep issues of reality. Near-death experiences just so happens to be one of my favorite topics, and we're blessed to have Sharon Milliman on hand. So I guess, Sharon, if since we have you on right now, maybe you can kind of tell some of our listeners kind of who you are and a little bit about your background. We can kind of start with you.
Well, I'm Sharon Milliman. I live in West Virginia. I've had 4 near-death experiences. I'm a writer, public speaker about near-death experiences. Mom, grandma, all of those wonderful things. So, yeah,
that's amazing. I mean, to be honest with you, we are very well connected in this this near-death experience community. I mean, just the fact that we have like several other experiencers that are actually in the chat right now is just amazing to me. That, you know, we're all trying to promote the truth and you know, get the word out as far as you know, what it is we're here for. I mean, we're here for a reason. We're not here just to squander our lives. I believe that we're here for a purpose, and you know, I'm actually hoping that I'm fulfilling my purpose with, you know, spreading the truth or investigating and kind of getting down to the bottom of, you know, things as we see them. Now, for me, I've kind of investigated different angles, you know, trying to understand different perspectives. Me being rooted in the Christian church, I feel like, you know, that's kind of been my lens of interpretation when I investigate my reality. Now, but then when I started looking into near-death experiences, they started challenging my perspective a little bit, to be honest with you, because you know, and again, I feel like your experiences were your experiences, and I often feel like near-death experiences are actually intended for the individual that's having them. And Rod Walton just showed up again. Let's see if we can get this going. Hold on a second. Hello. Father Rod. Hello. Oh there. My gosh, you are sounding much better.
Yay.
Brilliant.
Oh, I'm so happy.
Oh dear.
Wow.
Let's have a look.
You know, we were just trying to fill in a little bit of the void, just with some small talk. And
I can see you.
You know, Sharon's sideways to us, but to everybody else, she's upright. So yep. I just whatever. I mean, technology doesn't always work in our favor, but we are talking to each other from across the world. Father Rod is over in the UK, I believe.
Yep.
And so. That's pretty amazing, if you ask me.
We're doing so.
I guess real quick, you know, since we have all 3 of us here, I guess I can go back to you, Father Rod, and you know, we can kind of give you a little bit of an introduction on your background and kind of where you're coming from, why you're involved in the near-death experience study, and kind of what your goals are in your ministry and things like that.
Yeah. I come from a background of police. I was a police officer for 26 years. I had a supernatural experience in 1975, which completely changed my life. And at that time, a film came out called The Silent Witness about the Turin Shroud. So I became a Christian at the same time as I started reading about the Turin Shroud. At the same time, Raymond Moody's book came out, his near-death experience book. So I was reading Near-Death Experience, Turin Shroud, and I'd just become a Christian.
Yes.
And I actually began to realize they were all dovetailing together. The Turin Shroud, the near-death experiences, and in the police force, they're very much into evidence.
Yes.
So I used to try and go in there and chat with them, and they say, yeah, what's the evidence? What's the evidence? And all of a sudden, I would start giving them evidence. I would give them evidence for near-death experience, evidence for the Shroud. And that took the wind out of their sails, and that started listening to me. And then, when I became a priest, I used the same principles. If I'd speak to people, I'd have an evening's discussion group. I wouldn't talk about the Bible. I would talk about near-death experiences the first week. The second week, I'd talk about the Turin Shroud. The third week, I'd speak about the Bible, because all the problems have been sorted out in the first 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you were investigating so we call it the Shroud of Turin. You call it the Turin Shroud. Either, potato, but
same thing. Yeah, same thing. Yeah.
So I started. I kind of looked into it at one point when I was, and we discussed this in the past over Facebook. But I met a guy that actually was very well connected. I mean, he actually did investigation on the Shroud directly. Yeah, like he actually was part of the research team, and I'm trying to remember his name now.
Was it Barry Schwartz? Was it Barry Schwartz?
That's who it was.
Yep.
I couldn't remember his name there for a second because
he was a photographer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So wait, did you say that you actually worked with the Shroud directly as well, or was it just an?
Oh no! I got interested because at the same time as I became a Christian, the Shroud film came along. So obviously I thought, wow, this is interesting. And my battery's running low. Oh, my battery's... Is that connected, Caroline? My battery's running low. Sorry about this.
Do you have a way to...
My battery seems to be running low.
Do you have a way to plug into power?
Yes, okay. Yep. Yep, we're on. Yep. It's okay. It's been sorted. With all the taking all the stuff out, we took the battery... Oh, sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
Anyway, getting back to what I was saying, I started studying the Shroud, and I call it the fifth gospel, because ultimately everything that's in the gospel about the crucifixion is in the Turin Shroud. But now you've got forensic evidence. So once you've got the forensic evidence of the Shroud, that really gives a problem for the skeptics who try and question the gospels. So
real quick, Johnny from the chat is asking, can you tell us more about what the Shroud is? Because maybe there's people that don't know what it is. Yeah. The Shroud is a piece of cloth. It's a 14 foot 3 inches and 3 foot 7 inches in width. It's got an image of a body on it. Now, until about, I think, 1898, Seconde Pierre took a photograph. When he took that first photograph, it changed everything, because you would then add a picture. So you had the negative and then you had the photograph. Does that make any sense? Yeah. So the Shroud is the burial cloth of Christ, as far as I can see. The evidence points 100% to it as well. Well, yeah, it obviously has blood stains in the locations that we would expect to see blood stains if you were hung on a cross.
But the blood was actually on the Shroud before the image went on the Shroud. The actual blood was there prior to the image. Yeah, so that means that there was some sort of power, like power that came out of the body. Exactly, radiation. There's radiation came from the body. Now, if you actually look at the Shroud, the body actually levitated. The body actually levitated off of the slab and literally gave off an energy. That is amazing. I mean, just the thought of you being able to prove that forensically is amazing to me. Yes. I mean, it almost sounds like fiction, like in some ways, for those who are, not into the supernatural or whatever. I mean, if you can prove something forensically, and that's kind of the approach that I can appreciate, is coming from a scientific perspective, because, granted, I was raised in church, but I was raised around people that were very skeptical of everything.
And I understand the traditions of religion and things like that. And I started, in a lot of ways, I broke away from the traditional mindsets of, in fact, going down this road of near-death experience is almost breaking away from tradition for me, because, I'm really just trying to look for patterns. And my ultimate goal is validating a proof of a creator.
Yes.
And I like to approach that from a scientific perspective, because if you can prove scientifically that there's a creator, then you get a lot of people who are science-based in their thinking to be more open-minded to the thought of it.
Yes.
So anyways, as far as the shroud is concerned, this cloth that was, Sharon dropped out. So maybe she's, I don't know if she will be coming back. But anyways, so yeah, awesome that I can hear you fine now. So for those who were just now coming in, this is Father Rod Walton. We are connected through the Jesus and near-death experience. I forget exactly what the title is for the forum, but Sharon's coming in again. Hold on a second. Here we go.
Hi, Sharon. Hi, Sharon.
You're back.
I'm back.
So yeah. So anyways, we're just kind of tying, and again, I like to contrast all kinds of different perspectives and finding patterns. So you're saying you found some patterns in the shroud.
Yes.
And tied it into near-death experiences. How did you see the patterns in that?
Right. The near-death experiences obviously talk about a being of light. It's all about light. St. Paul, on the road to Damascus, speaks about light. The Mount of Transfiguration, they said Jesus glowed like the sun.
Yes.
And with the Shroud of Turin, there was a blast of light energy that created the resurrection. So it's all about light. And I found out this morning only this morning from a physicist. In fact, I read it, that frozen light is matter. And matter is frozen light. So if you think about it, everything is light. Yeah.
I really appreciate talking from this perspective, because it does, so this word supernatural or metaphysical or something like that, it kind of has a stigma. A lot of people will just like have a knee-jerk thought like, oh, supernatural, it just means that it's fake and made up or something like that. But when you actually look at what it is from a scientific perspective, okay.
Yes.
Metaphysical just means that it's something you don't understand.
Yes.
Same thing with supernatural. There's things that can't be explained. That doesn't mean it's fake. It just means that they don't understand how to explain it scientifically. So, so as far as this light being, this light radiation, I mean, these are the experiences that people have whenever they have encounters with like angels or whatever it ends up being. They're like spirit beings that are radiating light, or they're so brighter than the sun and things like that. And I started looking at it less like a supernatural or, like in a spiritual sense, that I almost look at it more like a physical and energetic understanding of it, because everything is electrical in nature and the way I view things. So, so we are physical bodies that have electricity running through them. And that's the reason we have life. Now, I would venture to say that our spirits or our soul is the power source, in the sense that is how we're connected to God, so to speak. Now, so again, like on this channel, or on, when I discuss near-death experiences, or when I discuss all kinds of different perspectives when it comes to I really enjoy talking metaphysical, but I try to tie the supernatural to reality, because electricity, we don't understand how that works. We just know that it functions in everything that we do. And that's just one of the patterns that I start to notice, is that everything is electrical in nature. So as far as near-death experiences, and again, this is one of the topics that I absolutely love talking about, because not only do I see patterns in near-death experiences, but I want to say there's like 10% of people that are resuscitated that say that they had some sort of experience, whether it be like out-of-body experience, or they saw some other realm or some other outer darkness or whatever it was. I mean, but there's definitely patterns. Now, one of the reasons I actually wanted to bring you on, Rod, is because I feel like you have a little more experience in the area of, bereavement and, helping families that are suffering with loss and things like that. And, I feel like, the more I study and research this, the more I start noticing that death is a beautiful thing, which is kind of scary in some ways, because nobody wants to lose family members or anything like that. And again, I don't want to dominate this, but I kind of want to give my perspective on why near-death experiences are relevant. So we have, like, my mom died briefly, had a near-death experience, and she was resuscitated. And then she lived for 2 more years, and she told her story, but it was one of those things she kind of kept private. She didn't really want to talk about it very much. But she basically had a hellish experience, and then ended up going on to, she went on to see her brother and her mom. So my uncle and grandma, who had already passed. So anyways, I just think it's near-death experiences are very common. And I see that, I kind of want to know your perspective, Father Rod, on near-death experiences, and what is so intriguing to you about it, or what your connection is to it.
Yes, without a doubt. Yeah. I think when I lost my mother, it was my research into near-death experiences all over the years. Mm-hmm. That literally healed me very quick. I was very, very, very close to my mother.
Yeah.
And I dreaded her passing. She's my best friend and everything you can think about, a good mum. But immediately she passed, I had a great peace. And I knew that I was going to see her again. I had no doubt, because the evidence was overwhelming. And I was actually shocked that I could recover this quick. So I wanted to pass it on. I then started thinking, how can I do this? So I started talking to people about it and explaining and having chats with them. And they started reacting to saying, wow, will you come out for a meal with me? I want to talk to you about this. And I had one guy, he was a friend of mine. In fact, he was my barber. He was going through bereavement. And we went out a meal. And after about an hour, we had chatted. He leant over to me, he put his arm on my arm and said, that's it. That's all I need to know. And he never looked back. That's how bereavement rescue started. And then I became a priest. I wasn't a priest then. And then it all started going in. And so I thought, right, I want to pass this on. So God led me into being a minister working with the bereaved, I believe. I do everything else, but every time someone's bereaved, they normally say, oh, get in touch with Rod, because a lot of ministers, sadly, they've got head knowledge, but they haven't got the heart knowledge. I'm not knocking them. There's a lot of good ministers, but a lot of them don't understand the continuity of consciousness, and so they're limited.
Yeah, I'm a researcher of the Bible too. In fact, I actually am always, trying to think of. I feel like there's a lot of information that is presented to us in the Bible, as far as like how to live. So whenever you hear like we are saved by grace through faith, not of ourselves, but it's a gift of God. I start thinking about how that has become almost like something where people misinterpreted, like, oh,
Yes.
we don't have to do anything
Yes.
because grace is just going to take over or whatever. And but then it says faith without works is dead. And then I started thinking, what about, I mean, are we going to err on the side of, doing God's work? Or are we going to err on the side of not doing anything? What makes more sense? And I feel like a lot of people are confused when it comes to why we're here. And I believe that the Beatitudes, or the Sermon on the Mount, sums it up. And that is, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are the meek. And it goes on to the golden rule, which is, do unto others as you would have them do it to you. And then it says, I didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. So Jesus is basically saying, I didn't come to say you're not responsible to abide by the law. No, I'm actually trying to confirm what it's saying. But then let me continue to say that, you did all these things in my name, but you never had the relationship, and you never did the will of my Father. So depart from me, I never knew you. And that kind of flips me out a little bit. I don't really know how to interpret that through near-death experiences that much, because that's one of those. I kind of wonder what your thoughts are as far as, what that means, like outer darkness or separation from God or things like that.
Well, for starters, as Jesus said, you will know them by their fruits, which backs up what you've been saying. And secondly, there's outer darkness in this world. I mean, you haven't got to go far, where a lot of people are living in hell. They don't want to know God. They don't want to talk about God. Howard Storm was saying when he died, he didn't believe in God. But directly you call out to God, he turns up. He'll turn up in this world or the next. So ultimately, if you don't want to know God, he won't force himself on you. But directly you want to know him, he'll come running to you. Yeah.
Oh, man. The patterns that I see in near-death experiences is relationships and love.
Yes.
So if we are superficial and not, building each other up in our communities, which is really hard right now because, I feel like our government has really put a wedge in that, being able to have community right now in this time. And if anybody plays this back in like 5 years, it might be a different story, but we are literally shut down. The whole world is shut down.
Yes.
With the exception of, certain areas that are, not under anyone's government control. But I feel like this whole concept of, keeping people indoors, I don't really know how it is in the UK as much, but for here in Idaho, we are, and I don't know if you even know like where Idaho is, because in Europe the people are like, I know the United States, but I don't know Idaho.
Yes, similar. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're basically in the Northwest, on the other side of Washington, and we anyways, the point is, we are in a spot right now where we are starting to see early signs of tribulation, in my opinion.
Yes.
And tribulation, and again, for those who are listening, my understanding of the word tribulation, it means sifting of wheat, and or being refined in the fire, and it's a refinement process. It's not necessarily punishment as much as it is refining.
Yes, I agree completely. Yeah.
So I was talking to a gentleman actually that is on our near-death experience group that I believe is coming from a perspective of Hinduism, or like an Eastern religion. And so it's weird. Like when I talk to other people, I start noticing that they believe in the similar patterns. Like I start noticing patterns of their belief system versus what we believe. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm a Christian in the fullest sense of the word. I'm trying to follow the teachings of Jesus, and trying to understand. Basically, that's going to be my lens of interpretation. So you got my glasses as my little prop to, everybody views reality through a lens or a filter of interpretation.
Yes.
And I kind of liken Christianity to a lens or a filter of interpretation because, it says that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. No man will come to the Father except through him.
Yes.
And I kind of wonder about that too, because a lot of these near-death experiences, people from the Eastern religions are going to the light or having interactions with God, quote unquote. So it kind of makes me wonder, what filter they're viewing that near-death experience through. And I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on the transcendent nature of near-death experiences as far as like different cultures?
I think everybody who dies will have to go through Jesus. They'll have to go through Jesus. But if a say a Muslim lived a life following the golden rule,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus says, "I am the way," and so forth.
Truth.
Well, the truth and the life. Ultimately, knowingly or unknowingly, he's going to end up where a Christian will end up. Because if he lives like a Christian, he's going to end up where the Christians go.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get a Christian who lives like the devil, he's not going to end up where Jesus is.
Yeah. So Sharon, maybe you can weigh in a little bit on that, because I mean, you consider, you're obviously in a different position than we are when it comes to having an interaction with God. I mean, you would actually say that you were standing before God and literally having an encounter with God. Like, what did that look like to you as far as that goes?
Well, actually, Jesus, I saw him first. He came and walked me over to where God was. So I know that when God appeared to me, he appeared to me as a beautiful, loving, caring man. But I know that he turned his energy down or turned his light down or whatever to my level, or I would not have been able to stand it.
Yeah.
But I believe that he comes to all of us in ways that we can understand. And he
Yes.
brought me there for a reason. I mean, 4 lightning strikes.
Yeah. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because you were struck by lightning, not just once,
Right.
but you were struck by lightning, you said 4 times?
Right. It was over the course of a few years.
They say lightning doesn't strike with the same.
Well, guess what? It was over the course of it was like every other year until I was hit the 4th time, and it was twice by ball lightning and twice by lightning strike. And then the last strike, I'm standing before God, and it's because I wasn't listening. And so he kept turning up the volume a little bit more, until finally I was there, and he was like, "You are going to listen to what I have to say. Finally, you're here and you're going to hear me." So
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm very fascinated with not only the fact that you got struck by lightning. Did you end up like in the hospital? You said it was 4 times in the same time frame, or
over the course of a few years.
Okay, so you just think about the implications of that. Like, they they say that lightning, like when scientists are saying, like, oh, they're all mocking like the thought of, oh yeah, God sends lightning bolts down from the earth or down from heaven, and then they kind of mock it, but the reality is that it wasn't just some cloud that decided to strike you 3 times or 4 times. It's like,
No.
really?
No, like it was twice with ball lightning. So it actually came through the cracks in the wall, or between the wall and the window, the window frame. And so it had to actually find me, and it did. And I was working on the computer one day, and it came through thick, these beautiful, we lived in a Victorian house. And so it had these real pretty curtains, and they were real thick curtains. So it had to go through around the curtains, and it rolled across the floor, and it hit my hands on the computer and fried the computer. And I'm going, ow, really? And then the second time it came through underneath a big front porch and between the cracks between the window and the windowsill, and rolled across the back of the couch and hit me in the back of the head. And then the third time I was curling my hair, and the lightning bolt actually hit the ground and then traveled, because we had a transformer in front of our house. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it traveled, and when it did, it came through the curling iron cord and got me that way. And then the fourth time was actually, I was outside talking on a cordless phone, and it hit my right arm, and it just killed me.
Well, gosh, it kind of makes me wonder, like, there's a pattern to you getting struck by lightning. It's like, are you like looking around whenever there's a lightning storm? It's like, oh my gosh, I'm about to get struck by lightning again.
Well, yeah, actually, I go hide under a rubber mattress in the bathtub,
Whenever there's a thunderstorm, you're just like, let me go. Unless God wants to send you a message, maybe you gotta be ready for the message. In fact, Linda is asking, what did God say when you had that encounter? So,
well, he started asking. He was just sitting there on a log, and he was drawing. I don't know. He had a stick in his hand, and he was doodling in the dirt. And then I sat down next to him on the log, and he looked at me and he said, "What would you do if it was just me and you?" And I was like, "What?" I had no clue what he meant at all. It just went right over my head. And so he asked me again, "What would you do if it was just me and you?" And I still didn't get it. I just totally misunderstood or didn't know what he meant. And so he said, "Well, come with me." And we walked further into the wooded glen, and there was a clearing, and it was kind of like he just waved his hand. And when he did, it was like unzipping the sky, and I could see swirling planets and spinning planets and swirling gases, rainbow colored gases and sparkly stars. And I noticed there was nothing in it. No people, no houses, no cars, no animals, nothing. It was just all of that, and just me and him. And I turned and looked at him and I said, "No, I don't think so." Because
it just didn't make sense.
After the first 10 minutes of all of that, and me and you would not like me anymore with all my questions and my chatter. And he just threw his head back and he laughed. And he has a magnificent laugh. It's very contagious. So then we walked over and we sat back down, and he asked me the question a third time. And I still didn't quite know what to say. He said, "What would you do if it was just me and you? No parents, no husband, no children, no friends, nobody, just me and you." Well, I didn't know what to say. I don't know. I felt like I was being quizzed or something, and I was going to flunk the quiz. So I looked at this beautiful tree that was in front of me, and I was noticing the detail of the bark. And I noticed well, before that, I was looking at the tree, but at the same time I was looking at the tree, I said, "God, your 100th name in the Quran is God is everywhere, God is nowhere, and God is in me." And he said, "Yeah, that's right." Well, I've never read the Quran in my life, never even saw the book, don't know anything about the Islamic tradition, nothing. So
I gotta say something about that real quick, because no, I'm not the guy that's gonna say, Islam is the way to heaven or whatever. But I'm gonna say that even the rocks will cry out, or he'll use a donkey to communicate to people or whatever. And it's like, I kind of get the feeling that God doesn't necessarily subscribe to a tradition necessarily. Like, we're trying to figure God out, and the best way we can do that is see God from our vantage point. Now, granted, I feel like okay, so Father Rod, I don't know exactly what your position is on this, but so say we have like a big pie, right? And everybody has a slice of the truth.
Yeah.
But not everybody has a full understanding of the big pie. So I think that, there's some people that have more understanding than others. And I think that within our capacity, we don't have the ability to understand everything. But I think that we're actually given the capacity to love, which is the highest level of truth, or I guess you could say, or the highest level of government. I actually say God is the king, or Jesus is the king of that government. And I don't know. I just think it's interesting that all the patterns in near-death experiences point to love. And Sharon, I don't know, like you being in the presence of God or Jesus. I've always heard people say that I've felt this overwhelming sense of love that you could never translate. It's ineffable. You can never show or explain to somebody that love. Right. And so, like, one of the things that I wonder often is, like, with the different perspectives on near-death experience, like, is it possible to have a diluted experience, or something that is, intercepted by like a demon or something, and they present like an angel of light? And that's one of the things that I often think about, because, and I've talked to people about this before, and sometimes people say that, God gives us, what we need to see at the time to have a transformative experience, such as a hell experience, or whatever the case may be. And I'm trying to have more, discussions with people who have had near-death experiences, and kind of find the patterns. But one of the things that I'm most concerned about is in Matthew 24. It talks about in the last days, or what will be the sign of your coming in the end of the age. And he says, watch out that no one deceives you. And so, like, Jesus's first instruction when he was explaining to the disciples what to expect with his return, he says, watch out that nobody deceives you, because they're going to come and, presenting themselves like they're Christ. And there's going to be many Christs, So these are the things I think about. And I don't know if I really get that from near-death experiences that often, because I want to, look to near-death experiences as a form of truth or authority. But sometimes I don't see that authority from one. I mean, I can't like pick and choose, I guess you could say, because sometimes they're not always consistent. Do you know what I'm saying?
Are you asking me?
Well, whoever wants to chime in, I guess. Father Rod, how about you?
Well, I think if any experiencer comes back and is anti-Christ, which there are some, run. Mm-hmm. If they start saying this is wrong, that's wrong, they will attack the Bible. No. But if it comes back and it leads you to Jesus and the scriptures and loving, and like my friend Sharon, if you've got the love of Christ in you, because God is love. But if they start moving you away from God or Jesus or the scriptures, the alarm bell should ring.
Yeah, and I'm very cautious and hearing different perspectives, and I'm trying to operate from the power of God, because to be honest with you, I feel like I say that from a physical perspective. Literally electricity came through Sharon, and that was the electricity of God. And
yes.
so
But the thing is you can't. The devil, he cannot love the way Jesus did. When I was standing with Jesus and God, that love was so huge.
how can you counterfeit such a love?
You can't. That being, there's no way, no possible way. And I've had a lot of people come to me because when I saw Jesus with very long hair, dark skin, brown eyes. Even though I could look in his eyes and I could see blue, I was looking into his soul, but his eyes were brown. I mean, he was a Middle Eastern man, and when he appeared to me as he did when he walked the earth. But I've had people come at me like you wouldn't believe, telling me that, oh, Jesus has hair up to here. He's not, and he's got blonde hair and blue eyes, and he's not what you saw. You were talking to the devil. And I'm like, there's no possible way, because and I've talked with Father Rod about this too, because it really hurt my feelings. I mean, and when my two brothers greeted me, when we get back to what Father was saying about the shroud, when my two brothers greeted me in heaven, they were wearing a very expensive linen clothing, a shirt, a lounge shirt, and lounge pants. And they specifically took a piece of that cloth and stuck it in my face. And it was a herringbone weave. I didn't know what that meant until just a couple years ago, when my husband was in the kitchen baking, and I walked in, and what he had on the TV was the shroud, about the Shroud of Turin. And they did the exact thing at the exact moment that I walked in the room. They took the shroud and they had it up here like this, and they took a little close up and they stuck it right there. And it was a herringbone weave. And I dropped to the floor and I was sobbing. And my husband was like, "Oh my God, what's wrong with you?" And it was like, look at what's on the TV. What my brothers were showing me was the Shroud of Turin is the burial cloth of Jesus. And the man that you see on that, it was that light of when his spirit, God breathed his spirit back into Jesus. And that's what caused that light, which caused that image to create itself. And there's not a man on this planet that could ever replicate something like that. That was a miracle. And my brothers were showing me this, and it was so profound. And then I've talked with Father about the hair, and how people will attack me about the hair. And it's like, well, first of all, maybe Jesus doesn't have a barber in heaven, or doesn't care. And he let his hair grow long. I don't know.
This is where like traditions of man, I kind of think that just takes people over sometimes. It's like, really, hair is completely irrelevant. Now you could say that
Father
maybe
said, tell him what you said, Father. He put it in a ponytail.
Yes. In fact, on the shroud, that actually got plaits at the back, and the actual shroud. It's exactly what a Jew of that time, a rabbi, would have been wearing his hair like. Yeah.
And it's long all the way down his back. You can see it all the way down his back. And I was like, yes, I knew it. When Father told me that, I just wanted to reach through the phone and hug him, because it was like,
you were spot on, Sharon. You were spot on. You got it spot right. Spot on. Yeah.
Wow. So I actually looked up a picture of a herringbone weave, and it just, I don't know. Hold on. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
Anyways, I just thought I'd look it up, but
you could see the cloth was very expensive. The linen was very expensive, just like the linen that they wrapped Jesus in. belonged to
Yeah.
a man who was very rich, so it was a very expensive cloth. And it was just amazing when my brothers showed me that. And of course, they were babies when they died. So, I mean, when I saw them in heaven, it was like, at first I thought they were angels. And then it was like, oh my gosh, I know who you are. Oh my gosh. You know, we had this beautiful family reunion, but they had to show me that cloth. And so.
Just saying that, it makes me feel a little emotional at the thought of meeting my two children that died. We had miscarriages, and I heard, I don't know if I'm trying to remember the name of the kid that had the near death experience, but the one that they made a movie after.
Bopo.
Heaven is
Bopo.
for real.
Yeah, Bopo, isn't it? Bopo, I think.
Heaven. Well,
It's
I'm
heaven
trying to-
is for
Yeah.
real.
Yeah,
And it had
that's right. Yeah,
picture of
that's
Jesus
right.
that
Yeah,
girl drew
that's right.
Rocky on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't know if it was the kid or I think he was saying something about how he met his sibling that died in a miscarriage, and I don't know. I it's near and dear to my heart right now because, for one thing, my wife and I didn't have a baby until we were 10 years married, and then now we're having another baby at 12 years of marriage. So I'm a little late in the game as far as having kids, but I'll tell you what, that freaking our first kid was a miracle. I don't know if I had a chance to tell you the story, but I don't know, a month ago, I had a dream. And my dream was extremely vivid. And my wife actually had a positive pregnancy test in my dream. So I woke up the next morning and I'm like, oh my gosh, honey, I had a dream that you were pregnant, and it was a positive pregnancy test. And she's like, no, there's no way. I already know I'm not pregnant. And I'm like, well, okay, whatever. You know how like dreams sometimes they're very vivid and you just don't know how they're relevant, right? But she ended up like it lingered in her mind, and she's like, the next day she ended up taking a pregnancy test, and sure enough, she was decisively pregnant. It was like a positive pregnancy sign on that. So, I felt like God gave me an insight on, having a kid on the way. So I don't know. I just feel like I think that everybody to some degree is connected to God, but I don't think everybody. So this is my theory, and I'm going to present it to you guys and see what you think. So everything in this realm that we're in is electrical in nature. Now I work on electronics. You have conductive, like copper, certain materials that are conductive, but then you also have materials that are resistant. So it resists electricity. So I feel like in some ways we have like the ability to resist God, or we have the ability to be a conduit for God. And I kind of get the feeling that some people are resistors of God and other people are electrical conduits. But I think that everybody has the capacity to be a conduit for God in the sense of like being a temple of God or something. And I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, Father Rod?
Yeah, I do actually. I think we're all one, literally all one. And if we go back to scripture and also near-death experience life review, in scripture, Jesus said when he was saying, when I was in prison, you visited me. When I was naked, you clothed me. And they said, when do we do this? And he said, if you do it to the least of these, you do it to me. That again shows the interconnectedness. And then when we go into the near-death experiences, when you have a life review, if you hurt someone, you feel the pain. If you love someone, you feel the warmth. So it shows that the scripture and the NDEs dovetail perfectly.
Yeah,
the oneness.
That's so true. I mean, that is the patterns that I see in near-death experiences. Is that in life reviews? In fact, Sharon, you had a life review, and Linda wanted to hear more about your story too. So I wanted to maybe give you more of an opportunity as far as it seems like people that are here in the chat are very interested in like hearing your story. So maybe if there's anybody out there that hasn't heard your story, you had an encounter with God. You had a life review too, right?
I did. I did, yeah. After I met my brothers, they were the ones who told me I was dead. I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. I can handle this because everything was so beautiful and it was just magnificent. And um, it was they walked with me a little bit further into the garden, and the huge loving presence that at that particular time was formless, and I knew it was God. He was huge and he was formless at that time, and he was just that love just filled every single cell in my body, and I felt like I was lit up like a Christmas tree, and just so he walked from beside me to behind me, and my two brothers were one on either side of me, and it was my life review was like watching an old-fashioned movie on an old-fashioned movie reel, a black and white movie. And it was from the moment I died the moment I was born until the moment I died. And I just watched it, and it was over just like that fast. It was in quick motion, fast motion, but I saw all the details, and God did not judge me. And there was all kinds of other people around me, people I knew, but I didn't know from where I knew them. And they were from all different time periods. And they all gathered around for support and love while I was watching this movie. And nobody judged me. God didn't judge me, and I didn't judge me. It was just like for a matter of fact. And I even asked my brothers, what did I miss? My life must have been pretty boring because there was nothing in it that, and it was over so quick. But I guess what I always grew up believing was that God was judgmental and angry and vengeful and hateful. And that's not the God that I met. He was so loving and so patient and so absolutely beyond words magnificent. And he didn't say one word, nothing, just lots of love poured into me. And that was my life review.
Yeah, it's interesting that, see, like in the book of Revelation, it says that you will be judged by your deeds. And so that's confirmation to me that we are judged by our deeds. And not to mention all these life reviews that I hear about, the consistency of like from one experience to the next, there's life reviews. And it's an interesting pattern for anybody. And again, I've made a couple different documentaries about near-death experiences, and the latest one that I did kind of showed some of the work of Sam Parnia. I don't know if you know who Sam Parnia is, but he actually pretty famous as far as near-death experience research, and he's gotten a lot of publicity, like on the mainstream when it comes to the AWARE study. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but he basically is a resuscitation doctor, works in the ER, and he does. I think that the study has over 2,000 resuscitations, and he has actually confirmed with, some of the people actually having out-of-body experiences, and he actually puts signs above like the level of like where you can see, to see if anybody saw the signs, like an image or whatever it was. And people are like going back and saying, yeah, I saw this, picture of a pear or something like that. I don't know. There's just different things that are on there that you can verify that people are having out-of-body experiences. And so, these patterns, and again, my perspective is I'm trying to appeal to society from their from their dogma or their bias, I guess you could say, because if people want proof, I want to provide them proof. And what better proof than to use the science that they so cling to? And well, to be honest with you, though, everybody interprets the information differently. So, like one person might say, "Oh, well, you know, obviously it was a fluke or something." They'll find excuses for why, you know, it's not true or something. And you know, I hope with all of this that people can be open-minded and try to understand that there are patterns. There are life reviews in a large percentage. There are encounters with Jesus. There are you know, people that go out and have this. They go up through a tunnel, and you know, they all have this like overwhelming. Maybe not all, but there's an overwhelming sense of love when they're in the light. When they're in the light, and I sigh with like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I feared death so long. I don't know. So like, as far as you know, this concept of the shroud, you know, again, I don't know if there's a lot of people out there that care that much about the shroud, but you know, we like to, you know, point to the reality that Jesus existed on the earth, and Jesus was God manifest from my perspective.
Yeah.
And you know, Jesus literally had the power of God blast out through this shroud. That is just pretty amazing to me. And did you have any more insight on that, Father Rod, as far as like any other things that maybe you're aware of that other people might not know about?
Yeah, you've got the head, the napkin of the Sidurium, which actually has got the same blood as the shroud. It's kept in Oviedo in Spain, but they have been on the same body. I don't know if you're aware of that. Are you aware of that?
No.
Oh yeah, yes, very interesting. If you're actually interested in the shroud, and then you start studying the headcloth, it's incredible, because the headcloth has got a long tradition. They know where it came from, and they've actually got the same blood. And if you put the two together, it can show you where they all match up, all the bits and pieces. Yeah.
Wow.
More evidence.
Yeah. You know, a lot of people that I've talked to about like faith and trying to understand who God is and stuff. A lot of people that I grew up around in my church community, you know, they've kind of frowned on trying to have science validate our perspective, but I like to kind of view it from all the angles. You know, there's different angles to look at it. In fact, you know, Paul was one of those examples where he was the least likely person to be an advocate for Jesus. And, you know, the fact that he actually had an encounter with Jesus, like he was blinded and he had the scales in his eyes or whatever. But then he had a transformative experience. And I want to highlight that word, because a lot of the experiencers that I've listened to, in fact, Howard Storm was one of them. He was saying that, you know, you're kind of missing the point if you think that you need to, I guess, understand it from the perspective that most people try to understand it. It's not a matter of, I forgot exactly how he put it, but the main thing that he wanted to point out is that it is a transformative experience. You know, that it was for the person having the experience, number one. And number two is that your transformation is like being born again to some degree, because I feel like, you know, that's what being born again is being transformed, the way I see it. And all this stuff is really interesting to me. I'm getting some activity on the chat. Let's see here. Let's see. Linda says, loved Shroud stories. Shrew blood tested was female blood. Is that true? Which makes sense since his mother was only human. And okay, I gotcha.
No.
It's AB blood, isn't it?
AB. Yeah.
AB. Oh, okay.
AB. Yeah.
AB.
Yeah.
Wait, his mother was the only human in creation. What does that mean? I'm not sure.
Jesus was human.
It was, you know, it's from a male person,
Right.
and actually on the shroud also you've got bilirubin, which is bright red, which means it comes from a person who's been tortured, which is very interesting.
Bilirubin, yes. You know,
bilirubin.
my son had jaundice when he was born, and we used a bilirubin blanket.
Yeah,
so that they can put like sunlight or something in his
that's
skin.
right. Yeah.
So that's so weird. Like I'm familiar with bilirubin based on jaundice.
The interesting bit is about the shroud that science hasn't proved the shroud. The shroud has actually proved science.
Really? It's all
Think of it.
semantics.
Yeah.
No, that's
Oh, excuse me.
yeah. So I am fascinated by the shroud. I am, and I'm fascinated by archaeology that can shine light on the past. And I don't know if you guys have ever looked into Ron Wyatt. Are you familiar?
Yes.
Okay, so are you familiar with his found like the Ark of the Covenant story?
Yeah, and also he found some blood, which he supposedly, and I'm not sure on this one, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it sounds a little
he had
far-fetched,
analysed, and there was a chromosome missing.
Yeah, like it was just from one side, like
That's
one
correct.
parent. In other words,
that's right. Yeah.
It sounds like a really amazing story, I guess. Now I guess that story almost like you just have to believe him, kind of thing, or he's completely making it up. I'm not sure, but I am fascinated with a lot of the archaeological finds that he had, like as far as the Noah's Ark. And so the funny thing about maybe I'm telling you guys this story for the first time if you've never heard it before, but so they've discovered a boat-shaped object in Turkey, in the mountains of Ararat, which is the foothills, basically. It's not necessarily on the volcano portion of it. It's kind of in a wash area where the volcano like flooded and when it melted down and all the snow like washed through there. But the interesting thing is there's a bunch of anchor stones or drogue stones around the area that have etched in markings of like crosses and stuff like that. Like during the Crusades, they must have like found these stones and identified to it as being like some sort of like actual ark location. I'm not sure what the ancient people thought of it, but the thing that I thought was, gosh, I mean, the thing that is interesting to me is that the Quran actually says that the resting place of the ark is on Mount Judy. Now, if you actually do a search for Mount Judy, you will actually find that it is the exact location of where the ark is. So I don't know if that's confirmation, but anyways, I just thought I'd point that out. But as far as shining light on this guy, Ron Wyatt, I feel like I don't necessarily think he was full of it. I think that a lot of people do, because he found like everything in the Bible. It's like, how does one person, but then again, how does one person get struck by lightning 4 times? So I just
and get visits from Jesus, and we get to sit and talk to each other all the time. No, I'm kidding. Several times, but not all the time.
Oh, here's a good question. Dan O'Brien says, when did Jesus die for us? Or then why did Jesus die for us? If we all go to the same place, you must be born again. It's by his blood, not anything else. You must confess Jesus as Lord, not be good. So I think that in Romans chapter 8, it sums up what we're supposed to be. It says that by the power of the Holy Spirit, you can be transformed. Now, in other words, I think that Jesus's blood was grace, right? So grace is what helps us fill in the gaps. Now, this is the way I've interpreted it, is that if you actually go back and read Romans chapter 6, 7, and 8, it actually says that we have no control over our flesh on our own, but with the power of the Holy Spirit, we can overcome our flesh. And if that is the message that Paul is trying to put forth to us, we are supposed to have transformation. We are supposed to be transformed.
Yeah.
By the power of the Holy Spirit. Now, I believe that Jesus's blood will fill in the gap.
Yeah.
But I don't think that we're supposed to squander it and pretend like, oh, we don't need to do anything. Grace is going to prevail. In fact, that's the thing that Paul was talking about throughout the whole section. He says, so what you're saying, or so if one asks, like, so we shouldn't do good works so grace may abound? Absolutely not. He actually says it like right in Romans. So I think that we are supposed to strive for good works. Now, Now, does that mean that works is salvation? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it's all semantics. It's like the Pharisees were always trying to put forth like, oh, you need to do this and this and this. But it was all just trying to put on a facade. It was like just a facade. So obviously God can see through it. He knows a true, person when he sees one, I guess. But I often think about punishment, and I often think about judgment and things like that. And with life reviews, I've kind of gathered from near-death experiences that really the punishment isn't necessarily coming from God, but it's coming from us. Like we start judging ourselves. Like if we live a life that is terrible, we're going to have a hellish experience or something. Or we're going to be hating ourselves so much that we don't even want to be in God's presence or something. And but God is always so forgiving in near-death experiences, like in spite of who we are. So that's where grace makes sense to me, because as far as near-death experiences are concerned, everything is grace unless we feel like we can't accept grace. And I feel like we are the ones that interfere with grace, I guess you could say. Do you have any thoughts on that, Father Rod?
Yeah. Look, what you quite rightly say, when Jesus told us not to judge because we were going to be judged by how we judge people. Mm-hmm. I think he was telling us, getting us ready, because when we go before him, we're going to judge ourselves, and we're going to be really hard. If we're judging everybody, we're going to get judged with that, because we're judging ourselves. And secondly, on the question about Jesus dying, a very good book to read, NDE book with Angie Fenimore. I don't know if you've read her book. Have you read her book?
I have not.
Have you, Sharon?
No, I haven't.
She was actually shown how Jesus had to die, but it wasn't because we needed punishment. It was to stabilize everything, because ultimately we were reaping so badly and getting things so wrong. God come and took the can back, put it basically. And so ultimately we do need the blood of Jesus, but we need both. We're still going to do good works, because we're going to be judged on the good works in the life review. And we also need the atonement, which will balance it out, as you actually said.
Yeah, I have a question for both of you, but I'll start with Father Rod. As far as the concept of us coming to Earth like a pre-incarnate nature, like if we are like pre-existing beings that come into our body and basically experience this world, and then we come back and report what we've learned from this experience. So like this is our experience here. And that the near-death experiences are reality. Like, in other words, I kind of feel like we are here to complete a goal or a task. And so do you have any thoughts on pre-existence?
Yes. I think ultimately I think Sharon mentioned how Jesus had to turn the light down because he was so bright. Well, when you get up there, as far as I understand, we've got all different lights, some bright, not so bright, and some very bright. And when we come to Earth, we come twofold. One, so when we go back, our light is brighter because we've overcome. We're more loving, we're more caring. And secondly, my train of thought's going here. Secondly, we're supposed to bring heaven to her earth because Jesus said, "Thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven." So no way did he want it to go the way it's gone. He wanted us to bring heaven to earth. So if we're bringing heaven to earth, that's one mission, and two, to go back so our lights are brighter. That's my bit anyway.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on it, Sharon? On pre-existence? Does it say anything about that? Did anyone give you insight on that?
Not. I agree with what Father said, but we were supposed to come here, I guess, to learn how to love and be loved, is what I was told.
Okay.
And that's not the romantic type love. It's the agape love.
Yeah.
It's the no strings attached. I don't expect anything from you. And it's the kind of love that God has for us. And that's what I was told. And when Jesus also said to give him all of our burdens and our worries and our concerns and just love. Let him, what he said to me was, "I'm strong. I can handle it. And when you're at your weakest, I'm at my strongest. So you give all of that to me and let me take care of that. And you just do what you do best. And that's love. And that's what you do." Well, when I asked for what my purpose was or whatever, he said, "That is the purpose. That is your purpose. That's what you're supposed to do."
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that's the same purpose for every one of us,
Yeah, I kind of wonder if there is different roles that we play from one person to the next, only because it says the body has many members, and speaking to what Father Rod was saying about the kingdom coming on earth, I've kind of had a theory that I feel like, I don't know if you ever researched Revelation very much, but the book of Revelation is talking about, at the end, I think it talks about those who died in the Great Tribulation or something like that, that they would be given a stone, a white stone. I forget exactly the context, but the part where it talks about those who die will be given a stone or a white stone. And but then it says Jesus is the cornerstone, and then each stone will be like in the building of the New Jerusalem, and it's like a symbol. And it also says that the New Jerusalem will descend from heaven onto the earth. So to me, that says that not only are we going to be this structure, or the great city, New Jerusalem, but it will descend onto the earth, and it will also have streets of gold and pearly gates.
Yeah.
It's like heaven on earth. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will liken that concept of heaven, and it just doesn't register in their mind like, oh, that doesn't make any sense that heaven would be on earth. But I think that a lot of it is symbolic, because we are supposed to usher in this kingdom that you're talking about, and I believe that we are chipping away at it until we find that place of utopia, so to speak. I don't know. So I think that, I don't know. Have you looked into the New Jerusalem or whatever, Father Rod, as far as that goes?
Yeah, I personally think what we're going to do, we're going to bring heaven to earth, and ultimately Jesus, he said, "Thy kingdom come on earth," and I think if he says it, it's going to happen.
Yeah, I just see these are the things that I want people to think about.
Yeah.
Because you know, a lot of people just draw conclusions about everything, and you know, sometimes I think that there's different ways to interpret it, and there's always different ways to consider information, and so
Yes.
like
Yeah.
you know, these people, a lot of people when they're investigating near-death experiences, you know, the saying, "Don't dump the baby out with the bathwater."
Yes.
Well, so like that's the thing that a lot of people do, and sometimes they'll not only will they reject information if it's too convoluted for them, but they'll embrace information even if it's not true. So that's like where I'm trying to weed through a lot of this stuff, and I want this is literally my venture, I believe, as far as like the body having many members. I feel like my objective is to define truth.
Yeah.
Like, and really just present what that definition actually looks like, and having the correct filter of interpretation. So because I feel like, you know, there's a signature of creation written all over our reality, and if people can't see a signature of creation, then either they're completely rejecting it or they're just not looking. And I feel like that's one of the most important questions in our reality, because we have to be able to not only identify to there being a creator, but having a relationship with the creator and implementing that same kind of relationship with others. And I don't know, is that true, Sharon? As far as yeah.
Yeah. Well, with God, relationship is the most important thing. That's what he wants, is a relationship with us. And he doesn't, from what I understand, he doesn't care what religion you are or what tradition you are. He doesn't even ask you that. What he asks you is, how much did you love? What kind of relationship did you have with the people that I put in your life? And as far as what you were talking about, bringing heaven to earth, when I had my near-death experience, I didn't go up and I didn't go down. I went sideways. So I learned that heaven is no further than your own backyard. And when I came back from my near-death experience, I was here physically, but it was like I had 1 foot here and 1 foot still there. I mean, I don't know how you can sit with the God of all the world, you know, and not still be there. And I lived in what I called a pink bubble for like 6 months, and I loved everything and everyone, and it was like I could see this life force, this electrical thing that you were talking about, that just surrounded every tree. It stood out about 6 inches or so, 6 or 8 inches from the trees, and it was this beautiful golden, you know, color aura or whatever. And so it was that life force, you know, that breath of God that brought that tree into being, or that squirrel or the bird or the flowers or whatever it was. I could see that glow that was so I could see God in everything and in everyone and everywhere, and it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So heaven really was here on earth.
Yeah. You know, this person, Bama BF, they're saying they this is one of their favorite topics as far as near-death experiences, as is one of my favorite subjects. But is there anything that maybe you could touch on, Sharon, that maybe some of the listeners that haven't heard your story, if there's something that you can, like some sort of wisdom that you might be able to share from your experience that you can elaborate on?
What you're going to see in your life review is little things. It's not the great big things. It's the little things. So whatever you do in this world, whether it's doing dishes or laundry or fixing dinner or picking up trash or cigarette butts off the street or whatever it is, do it with love. That's so huge to God. It's not moving mountains or talking to a bazillion people in an amphitheater. That's important, but that's not what you're going to see in a life review. You're going to see the little things.
Yeah.
And so whatever it is you do, do it with love. And
Yeah.
the other thing was that no matter how tiny we are in the grand scheme of the entire universe, we are so intricately important to everything God ever created. So I tell people too that God loves you so very much that he thinks about you every single moment of every single day. And there's 7.7 bazillion people on this planet. So he's got a lot of people to think about. But you, it's like he loves you as if you were the only person he ever created. And so you are on his mind 24/7 constantly. And if he didn't love you that much, you would just cease to be as if you never were. So that's how much he loves you.
I'm trying to liken a scenario of like maybe sibling rivalry or something. You have like you feel like your brother or sister is like getting more attention from your parents, and it's like no. But I know what you're saying, that we just have to be able to accept ourselves to be worthy of love. That's kind of been a problem for me, because sometimes I feel like I'm not worthy of love. And but the more I've vested myself in all of this, I feel like I am nothing special, but I do believe that God is like places me on a pedestal in that sense, because I feel like everybody is loved, and the more you actually acknowledge that love, like being directed to you, then it's almost like how it'll bounce off of you and onto someone else. Because I just get the feeling that the more you like hate yourself, or the more you cannot allow love or to be loved, the less likely you are to love others as well. I don't know if that's true per se, but it makes sense to me. And so I'm wanting to just let you know, we've been on the live stream for about an hour and 40 minutes. I usually try to wrap up around 2 hours. So, we have about 20 minutes, but I guess, depending on your guys' time, I want to point out one quick thing, just for everybody that might be listening, and to both of you. But I feel like my understanding, or my crux of why we're here and what the Bible actually is saying to communicate to us. And then again, there's other people in the Bible that had near-death experiences, like Paul had a near-death experience, John had a near-death experience, Stephen had a near-death experience. There's people in the Bible that had the same kind of experiences, and they're basically able to communicate. And these things go back into time. Like Raymond Moody points out the myth of Ur, where this guy Ur in the Plato's Republic or something like that. This guy died in battle, and then he came back to life, but he explained that heaven was up and hell was down, and there was all these symbols that were basically the same kind of thing. And again, if everything, it's almost like there's a template for near-death experiences, a template where everything is communicated the same way, just through the filter of their belief system. So in other words, like if you're raised into an Eastern philosophy, you might see the same things, but you're going to interpret it a certain way based on your upbringing or whatever. And now when it comes to like the Bible, Matthew 5-7 is called the Sermon on the Mount. And I believe that is basically going to sum up everything. about how people should be. So like the Beatitudes, they call it how to be Beatitudes. You know, so the Pharisees always are talking about, oh, look at me, look what I did. I did all these things. And it kind of reminds me of like doing chores or something. You know, nobody really outwardly wants to do chores. And sometimes people have a bad attitude about it. But other people, like, I'm talking kids. Like if you're a kid and you want to go out of your way to make mom happy, you're going to do the dishes or something. And or you're going to be that kid that has resentment behind you know, doing the dishes or whatever. So I think that
a bad girl.
I just feel like the behavior behind or the feelings behind what you're doing make a difference. Because sometimes if you do things with a bad attitude, or not even just a bad attitude, but maybe your objective is to get people to look at you like, oh, look at what I did. You know, I like start bragging like on Facebook. Hey, I just went to feed homeless today or something like that. You know, I think that some people have the wrong motives. And but the reality is your agape love that you're talking about, Sharon, that's exactly what you're right. I believe that is exactly what we're supposed to do, is selflessly love people. And
but when we're young, we don't know that. You know, when we're teenagers or 10-year-olds and we're mouthing off to our dad and slamming the the cabinets like I did when I was growing up.
Yeah.
I deliberately went to my dad and apologized for being such a mouthy little brat. But it took getting struck by lightning to learn that. You don't want to get struck by lightning.
For whoever's listening, if you start mouthing off your parents, you might get struck by lightning.
Exactly.
No, so anyways, Father Rod, is there anything that you want to say as we begin to wrap up here? I'm going to probably call it a day in about 15 minutes.
Yeah. Well, actually, we normally remember the last thing somebody says to us. That's normally what sticks in our mind. And Jesus said to his disciples, the last thing, love one another like I have loved you, which dovetails into all we've been speaking about tonight. It's all about love.
Yep. It sums it up. That
God
sums
is love.
it up.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So as far as the definition, there's different. It's unfortunate that the English language doesn't really classify love the same way like Greek would. You know, obviously agape and phileo and I feel like if people aren't aware, agape is
all encompassing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so like as far as like what Jesus was saying about like you know, you didn't do the will of my Father or whatever. I believe the will of the Father is to serve people.
Yep.
The least of these, you might say. The least, it says you didn't do for the least of these, so you didn't do that for me. And I feel like, you know, the least of these are the people that are in the most need.
Yes.
And you know, there's people that stand out on the road with a sign or whatever. And obviously people get that gut reaction like, oh, those people need to go get a job or whatever. And, you know, sometimes they do need to get a job. And sometimes they're completely unfortunate and they just don't have what other people are given. And, you know, sometimes you got to go with your gut on stuff like that. And usually people just ignore their gut, you know, like if you have a heart for people and you're like, you know, they won't appreciate it if I help them in this way or something like that. You know, obviously you have to kind of, you know, have wisdom with things that you're doing. But the bottom line is, I mean, I think motive is everything. You gotta stop worrying about, you know, how it's going to reflect back to you, kind of thing. Some people will say, well, I'm not going to serve them because they'll never serve me back or something like that. So agape love is definitely one of those things where you're not going to be thinking about how that comes back around.
No.
So I don't know. I mean, like I have that down. I'm working on it the best I can, but gosh, I don't think. I mean, have you guys gotten there? Do you feel like you've achieved the goal of agape love?
Every day I go up about 10 steps and fall back about 12.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I think the fact that you're willing to admit that says a lot about you.
That's exactly right.
It's the people that say that, oh, I'm flawless.
I'm falling down again. He says, I love you and I'll pick you up. It's okay. Try again tomorrow.
You've only went up 10 steps today. You're supposed to go up like 20 steps.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, Father, he's got the little wings that flip around in the back, and the halo that's up there. So
Here it is, all around there. All around.
Oh, is that your
that's what that was. Oh, man. I don't know. You guys are a huge blessing to me. I've been able to, talk to you on the Facebook chat, and I've been able to, I met you, Father Rod, probably, 2+ years ago. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And, I made a documentary talking about consciousness and trying to shine light from a scientific perspective.
Yep.
And, the more I kind of venture down this road, the more I realize that spirituality is energy that operates through us. Yeah. And if we are receiving the energy or if we're the conduits of God, then his energy is going to flow through us, and we're going to love with agape love. That's how we can actually, be. I think that's where we have to surrender our nature. Yeah. So however we can do that, I believe that the power of the Holy Spirit will allow us to surrender.
Yes.
But we have to understand. We have to rid ourselves of. And I don't know how that. I mean, it's really a practice. It's a.
Yeah, I think it's what St. Paul said. It's no longer I that lives, but Christ that lives in me. Directly I start to live, it's all disaster. But directly I let Christ live, I got a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. So for anybody out there listening, I'm just going to say that I don't necessarily take the position that your truth is your truth and my truth is my truth. I actually feel like truth is absolute. Yeah. And
yep.
The name of truth is Jesus.
Yes.
And so like I actually had a teaching once called the paradigm of truth, and Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. If you say that Jesus is the way, he carves out a path for us. The truth is the correct way, and the life is how you can apply it. So if you can apply the road that he laid out for you, the correct path, then you're going to live life fully. Yes. And I believe that's applicable to life, and it's applicable to the afterlife.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think that if you can live according to the way God wants us to live here, we're going to have a heavenly afterlife, you might say.
Without a doubt. So before I go, you said you're going to make a film with Dr. Sampania.
No, so I did make one. Now, unfortunately, I have something that I need to redo it because basically what happened was when I posted it to the group, it was not able to be seen in Europe because I used a clip from the BBC, and they actually have a copyright issue on it. Yeah. So basically, I need to redo it. What I was trying to do was I posted this video with the documentary with what's her name, Pam Reynolds, near death.
Pam Reynolds, yeah.
So Pam Reynolds had a very unique experience that really shined light that you can be out of the body and perceive. Yeah. Well, so the problem is the clip that I used had a copyright on it, and
I'm with you.
And it can't be seen in the UK, so I have to redo it.
Oh, I see.
So anyways, but yeah, those are the things that I have to deal with as a content creator. And but I'm starting to notice other patterns about near-death experiences that have symbology, and there's a lot of symbology in the Bible that I think that people are not.
In fact, I think this is me personally. I'd read the Bible, but once I started researching near-death experiences, the Bible it came alive because there was so much in the Bible that all of a sudden, oh wow, yeah, the near-death experiences gave it life, without a doubt.
Yeah, and you know how they say that the Bible is the Word of God? Well,
Yes.
I started thinking like, you know, I believe that the Word of God is alive in more than just the Bible. I think that the Word is alive in us. The Word is alive in nature because you know, everything was created. So that's the thing that I try to identify to, that there's a signature of creation in everything.
Very much so. Yeah.
So that everything became more alive to me when I started viewing through the filter of near-death experiences. So
snap.
So I'm so blessed to have an opportunity to speak with you guys. And Sharon, I don't know if I really gave you an opportunity. We have about 5 minutes if you want to say some closing remarks. Is there anything that you have in your mind?
No, I just love you guys.
I
love you both.
Likewise, Sharon. Likewise.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, so for anybody that hasn't heard Sharon's like full breakdown, there's some stuff. If you just do a Google search or YouTube it or whatever, just search for Sharon Milliman. There's a lot of information out there that she's done interviews. She's had like filmmakers actually make full length documentaries about it. So honestly, she has an amazing story. You know, shout out to Chaz Hathaway. He was the former host of Near Death Experience podcast, and we're friends on Facebook. And you know, he did an interview with Sharon a while back, and that was the first time I was exposed to Sharon, actually. So anyways, so Chaz, if you hear this, how's it going? So anyways, but yeah, I'm probably just going to wrap it up here. And, you know, we can just keep in touch here down the road, and, you know, keep me filled in with what you guys are doing for God. And, you know, I'll definitely keep in touch with you guys. So
likewise.
Yeah, so it was a pleasure. And for everybody in the chat, you know, thanks for stopping in and dropping your questions, and, you know, have an amazing day.
God bless you.
All right, we'll talk to you guys later.
Thank you.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. How do I...